In this big project, we're going to detect the structure of Boko Haram by analyzing its mobility. Maybe you know who's Boko Haram, because in 2014 they kidnapped 276 girls in a school in Chibok, and the whole community in the world got together with the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. But it's also important to remember the Baga massacre. It happened in January 2015, and according to some, it had between 150 and 2,000 deaths. It happened just weeks before the 2015 Nigerian election, and according to some, it is the reason why Jonathan Goodluck was not re-elected. If you see, it was also famous for the hashtag YesWeBaga and I am Baga, because it was just 2 days after the Charlie Hebdo attack in Paris, so it is sort of related to that hashtag. Here we're looking at a map of all the Boko Haram attacks, and something relevant is that somewhere around here is the school where they kidnapped the 276 girls. This is the event where they kidnap and they destroy the Baga town. And something relevant about Boko Haram is that most of its attacks have happened in a very concentrated and specific region of Nigeria, but also they happen to be cross-border, as in this region between Cameroon and Nigeria, this region between Niger and Nigeria, and this region between Nigeria and Chad. We're going to be looking at a very specific region of the world, which is the junction between Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger. A few decades ago, this used to be the Lake Chad, but unfortunately the lake is drying. However, if you think about it, this is a region of the world that it used to be a lake, so now it is paintinous, moist, it has really little infrastructure, and therefore the mobility of a person there is quite restricted, because there is no big highway, freeway, or avenue. So that is relevant because we're going to be looking at the mobility of Boko Haram. And what do we mean by looking at the mobility? Well, we're going to be looking first at data. So we downloaded data from ACLED dataset, which consists of nearly 4,000 events, and that has nearly 40,000 fatalities, which means roughly 10 and a bit fatalities per event. And now what is interesting to observe is that since its formation in 2009, basically, Boko Haram started committing certain number of events. So what we're looking at here is since the year 2012 and until 2019, which is when we downloaded the data, in the horizontal axis is time, and in the vertical axis is the cumulative number of events per year. So by the year 2013, Boko Haram has committed nearly 600 events. By the year 2015, Boko Haram had committed nearly 1,500 events, and so on, with 2019 committed nearly 3,300 events. Now, something interesting, and this is why it's relevant to observe the structure, is that this purple stripe that is here, that consists of when Boko Haram has a speed of 1.3 events per day. And by speed, I mean that there are some outliers, there are some days in which they are more active than others. But if you look at it, it is almost like a perfect straight line that has gone since the year 2014. And also, in addition, in the year 2016, Boko Haram got divided into another faction called the Barnawi faction. And this Barnawi faction, they took a bit of time here between 2016 to 2018 to form and structure. But now, since 2019, they are also committing nearly one event per day. So if you think about it, we're talking about a very specific terrorist group which has the ability to produce 1.3 events per day in the main faction and 0.9 events per day with the Barnawi faction. But these two are consistent for nearly 5 years now. So this is a group that moves, that has some planned or unplanned events, but anyway, they are keeping a very fixed speed for the past nearly 5 years. Something very valuable about the dataset is that it has the coordinates and the date of each event. And with that, we can think of it as a sequence of locations in which Boko Haram has been active. So now what we wondered is what happens if the same person took part in all of the events? Because I can draw a line between every two consecutive events, then what we can think of it is that if the same person took part in all of the events, the person would have gone around the Earth 14 times in 7 years, would have traveled 310 kilometers each and every single day, and would work roughly 108 hours per week in that very mountainous with low infrastructure region that we were talking about before. So what we said is that it is impossible for the same unit or the same person to be part in all the events. Okay, so now we know that it's not a single group or a single unit. But then the question is how many? And so what we did here is a mathematical model in which we analyze all of the events, the 3,800, and we try to see what happens if one unit is capable of moving a certain speed and a total certain distance between two events. And those two numbers we're going to move to see what happens if they move, let's say, 30 kilometers, 80 kilometers per day, or 200 kilometers per day. And what we do is we look at where was a unit located before. So for instance, here in day one, there is an event and therefore there has to be a unit there. And as time passes by, that unit is capable of moving certain distance, which is a certain speed, because each day they move a bit. And if a new event happens and is too far away from where the first unit is located, then we say, aha, there is a new unit. This new unit is also moving a certain speed per day. And if there is an event that is located nearby where the previous event happened, then we say, okay, maybe this new event was responsible the previous known unit, and so on. We analyze the 3,800 events like so, and based on that, we try to estimate how many units is divided Boko Haram. And now I briefly want to mention some of the results we got. If we look at subsequent events committed by Boko Haram, what we're looking at is what happens if a faction from Boko Haram or a unit moves 90 kilometers each day, and let's say they move at most 100 kilometers between two events, then we know that there are at least 75 units. But even if they move much faster, let's say 135 kilometers each day, and they move 200 kilometers between consecutive events, then Boko Haram would have roughly 40 units, which means that we're speaking about a terrorist group which has committed a lot of damage in Nigeria and West Africa, which is separated or at least organized in 40 different units. This methodology allowed us to detect between 2012 and 2019 the moments in time in which Boko Haram had a restructure. So for instance, here we're looking at 2015 moments in which different parameters are showing that Boko Haram had actually quite a severe restructure. And regardless of the parameters that we're observing, we are looking at moments in time in which Boko Haram had a severe restructure. 2015 and 2019 are the two moments. Based on the results, we can construct a spatial network, and the spatial network means something like following. We're looking at where is Boko Haram committing two consecutive events, measuring the number of times that Boko Haram has moved between two consecutive locations, and the results are as follows. There are a lot of movements between different Boko Haram units in these regions, which means that perhaps it is impossible to detect where the new attack is going to happen, where the new event will take place, but we can maybe detect that there is a lot of flow of Boko Haram units in different locations. And why is that relevant? We detected that most of the subsequent events happen in one side of the border, and then it's likely that they are crossing to the other side of the border. So many of the events happen in Nigeria, and then they cross to Niger, happen in Cameroon, and then they cross to Nigeria, and vice versa. And why is it relevant for us in PIC to look at Boko Haram and terrorism and security? Well, for many reasons. First is that Boko Haram has created nearly 2.3 million people displaced in West Africa, which clearly has an impact in poverty, in hunger, in quality of education, in infrastructure, in life and sustainability, in peace, in justice, and many reasons, but also in terms of cities. Nearly 60 or 65% of the events that Boko Haram conducts happen actually in cities, including Maiduguri, with more than 500,000 people, Kano with 4 million people, Abuja, the capital of the country. And so, actually, when we speak about terrorism in West Africa, we're speaking about a very urban problem in the region, which has an impact on migration and displaced population, on the infrastructure of the cities, on the development of the region, and more. Thank you very much.